Hi, everybody, and welcome. And welcome you who are in the Zoom. And here's how I'd like to have this morning run. I have two dilemmas that I would like to pose to the audience. One is a professional dilemma, and one is really a more personal dilemma. And the way it will work is that I will present the dilemma, have you respond to the question of what would you do. We'll pass the mic around, and since I have two different dilemmas, I may end up cutting short the first one for discussion so we can go to the second. But that's the lay of the land. So the first one is the professional dilemma. I worked in a hospital in the surgical unit. I have a patient, Sally, who's 42 years old. She is facing surgery for a rather serious condition related to her right arm. It's not a usual ortho situation because it requires very delicate and advanced surgery. Nevertheless, she's on the unit and anticipating this procedure. My role as the social worker on the unit is to help the patient talk about what they're facing, how they're going to manage, perhaps even when they go home, engage family members as needed, and so forth. And generally be a support. As part of my contract with the hospital, I am forbidden to discuss anything specific about the doctor and the intervention, the surgery. So I go into Sally's room for a check-in, and she is all excited. She's been scheduled. The doctor had just left maybe 10 minutes before, and she's scheduled now for the surgery in 2 days. The surgeon said to her that he has a brand new approach. He's used it about 5 or 6 times for this very, very special, delicate procedure. And each one of those surgeries has been wildly successful. And she is ready to roll. The surgery's in 2 days, but she can't. She wished it could be this afternoon. Now, having worked on the ortho unit for quite some time, there's always a buzz about the various doctors and the nurses and kind of what goes on. And there's been a great deal of talk about this particular surgeon. And the talk has been consistently negative. Yes, he has performed 5 surgeries. Each one was a failure. And each one of those 5 surgeries required additional work by other staff. I know this because this is what I've heard out there. The question for you is, what do I do? What do you guys do? I mean, I will tell you the resolution to all of this. There are two different, absolutely, I will tell you how it played out. But what would you do?
Hello. So just to clarify, her doctor is lying to her about the success of these surgeries?
Well, you could put it that way.
It seems like it based on the way you...
Oh, yeah, I was going to push you.
Yeah. I would say if he's doing something like that, that's definitely not allowed. And even if you weren't to tell her directly that he has a negative reputation, isn't there someone else in the hospital that you could, like, tell on him to somebody and say, listen, he's being misleading. He's withholding important information from a patient. You get him in trouble. It'd be frowned upon. He wouldn't like you, but, you know.
Theoretically, yes. There's a review board. There's a whole situation when doctors there's a mortality review. There's a review process. He has managed to skirt it somehow.
I think people should come on. It's easier.
Yeah, if you can. Watch the wire, that's all.
There's a lot of forms you fill out.
Stand together
I'm very
so
dizzy.
people online can see you.
I'm
Thank
dizzy.
you. Yeah,
I know there's a lot of forms that you have to fill out. Are you allowed to speak to the patient's family? I don't know how old this patient is. Are you allowed to speak to the spouse, or if this is a younger person, mother or father of this patient?
Short answer, no. I am in my contractual relationship with the hospital as the social worker. I cannot make any direct comment about Dr. So-and-so.
My question is, how can you be sure that what you hear in the halls, in fact, is accurate, and that isn't really just that he has a personality that other people don't like, and therefore they badmouth him? He does go through the reviews, which say he did it okay. Why do you think that what is being said in the hallways is more accurate?
Anyone who's worked in a hospital, medical, nursing, Pat, you can even comment, the staff knows what goes on, perhaps better than anyone in the system. And they will know, they would know that there had been not 100% successful surgeries that this guy has performed. Some were okay, not hideous failures, but it was never what was promised. And Sally got the whole package from this surgeon, that it was phenomenal, brand new, excuse me, cutting edge surgery. And we know from being on the inside that that's not accurate.
So real quickly, and I want to get some clarification too. I don't know how long ago this was done. Do you know? How? Okay. All right. I don't know how long ago, but if it's now today, they have these doctor reviews that are online, and I would think, and I might be wrong, that the 5 families who had the mishaps with them, perhaps the 5 families put down reviews, or maybe somebody would happen to walk into her room and drop the names of people who had it before. I'm not saying you. There you go.
This preceded that kind of technology, when someone could go in, type somebody's name, look at the records, and so forth.
Before we do that, can we take some questions from Zoom?
Oh, sure.
So, I think Rick Shaper is first.
Joan, mention his name. Ask Rick Shaper. Joan, tell him Rick Shaper.
Oh, I'm sorry, Rich. I thought we had designated you. Go ahead, Rich.
Rick, it's Rick, right? Yeah. I would guess that you told her to get a second opinion. That's not violating any of your contractual obligations. And just by saying that kind of implies what you're really thinking.
Can you restate that for me? Rick, we need to raise the volume just a bit. I wasn't able to hear you fully.
All right. Can you hear me better now?
Much better.
Okay. I would have suggested that I would say you should suggest she get a second opinion on the operation, which is enough of a message, that just because a doctor had 5 successes, that's not really proof. That's not that many. I don't know if you could say that, but I think suggesting a second opinion would not violate your contractual obligation.
Okay, good suggestion. Go ahead.
So any person who was having a procedure has to sign informed consent. And in order to sign informed consent, you have to know the risks and benefits. This person obviously hasn't been given the appropriate risks associated with the procedure. So I would call the chairman of the department and report the physician for not obtaining appropriate informed consent, which is against the law and unethical. And if there's not an intervention directed particularly at this physician, not just the patient, but the physician, then this kind of conduct will continue. So I think you're ethically obligated.
Anybody else? Elaine, you can unmute.
It's Mika instead of Elaine.
Okay, Mika.
Okay, I would certainly try to follow our basic principle of golden rule. Do unto the others what you want done unto you. So I would not, as a retired physician, I wouldn't pay attention to the being a doctor or being a patient. This is two human beings. One knows the truth that this procedure was not well done, and I would tell this straight to the patient, and whatever she does with it, you know, she has the truth and facts to deal with. Thank
Okay.
you.
Anybody else in Zoom? Anybody else in the house? Come on up, Brian.
If you're not allowed to make any direct comment about the physician from your position contractually, is there any way you could speak to the physician directly? Could you take it to him, talk to him? You know.
Not if I want to keep my job. Come on up.
But she's saying she has a contractual.
Watch the wire. And you're a physician.
Yes. So I work in a hospital, so I have some perspective here. So this is very tough because you, as a social worker, has a different relationship with the patient. And most patients think physicians are, you know, up there, God. And there have been many cases where surgeons have had poor outcomes multiple times, 10, 20, 30, 100 times. And it keeps on happening because patients have so much faith in them, they don't even write a review. They think that this just happened to me, otherwise the surgeon is great. You know, so even reviews won't help in this case. So I've been in this situation. I'm not a surgeon myself, but I work in the environment. And I've had surgeons and other doctors who do procedures come to patients and say, oh, this is great, I'm amazing, this is going to be wonderful, but they're not. So I sometimes indirectly tell the patient that when they come to you and explain the procedure in detail, you should ask them, what are the possible risks? Is there a 5% risk, 10%? You have to fully inform yourself before you sign consent. And it kind of implies that they need to dig deeper into this. You know, I don't directly say anything against the surgeon. And also as a social worker, you might escalate to your supervisor to see if they can talk to that surgeon supervisor. That's something you can possibly do.
Okay. I appreciate that perspective. Anybody else? Come on, Jim.
I'm not sure about this, but when a therapist is with a client and the client says something to the effect that they're abusing their child, I believe that ends the confidentiality. And I think this might be a situation where the confidentiality should go right out the window because it's a lie.
Tricky, very tricky. And what Jim is referring to is, as social workers, we have built into our protocols with clients a duty to warn if there is impending danger, if we feel that there is impending danger. And on some level, this falls into that bailiwick, so to speak. I will tell you what I did. Oh, come on.
Hi. I was wondering if you could explain, what do you think is the positive outcome of a policy like this? Why do they have it? What is the good that it does? They put limitations on what a social worker can say about the hospital staff.
Well, these rules of behavior in this institution and in many institutions are pretty well set and established. And as an employee there, I have to abide by that. I may not agree with it. And but again, if I am working there, I have made an agreement to follow those rules. So what did I do? Well, I struggled. Some of what was being said in terms of did she ask the right questions? Should she have been encouraged to ask about risks? She was a patient in a lot of pain. She was a patient who couldn't wait to get this arm fixed and didn't have the gumption to ask a whole lot. I don't think she wanted to hear the answers. I think what she wanted to hear, which is what I think you implied, Doctor, that she put the doctor up here and wanted to believe everything that was told to her because it was going to relieve this terrible situation. Assuming there was some truth to what was going on out there, that indeed the surgeries may not have been total failures, but they never were quite what was promised, I still was faced with, what do I say? And here's how I managed it. She was extraordinarily excited. I said, look, you have 2 days, Sally, before the operation is going to take place. There might be a value, Sally, in looking into getting a second opinion. The doctor explained to you that this was experimental. Maybe if you look into and get a second opinion on a non-experimental procedure, you might want to go along with that. And she did. And she decided not to have the first doctor do the surgery. Right. I have to keep an eye on the clock. The second dilemma is much more of a personal dilemma. Did not happen in an institution, was not bound by rules, those kinds of rules. So a new faculty member joined the faculty at my school. And we realized after a bunch of meetings that we both had attended that we both had the same lunch break, time break between classes on a Wednesday. And we said, oh, that's great. Let's try and have lunch together. Great idea. And so we did. And just to get to know one another, the usual BS of a new person, the rules of the school, blah, blah, blah. Okay. This is now our fourth lunch. And now we're starting to talk about, well, what's your life like? Who are you? And so forth. And she tells me that she has never, she's about 55-ish. She says, I've never had a romantic relationship with anyone. And I have considered myself to be basically a committed loner. I live alone. I've never really felt the need to have a relationship. And that's who I am. Okay, fine. Another week or two goes by and we have another lunch, and she's acting a little differently. There's a little bit of a different ambiance about her. And what she tells me is that she was at a local museum and met a man at the museum. And they started talking, and they had coffee together, and she's now building a head of steam as it relates to this guy. The more that she spoke, the more I realized that I know the person that she is getting interested in. My friend Bob, who's been married to Ellie for forever, frequently goes to that museum, and that's why when she mentioned the museum, it kind of clicked. And I think, nah, it can't be Bob. Bob's been married to Ellie. They have a wonderful marriage and so forth. Well, everybody's smiling in the audience, so you know what went on here. So he, again, is a longtime visitor at this museum. As I know him and his wife for many, many years, they have a very committed, caring, loving relationship. And now my colleague is developing an interest in him. What do I do? What do you do? Do I say to my colleague, just an FYI, this guy's been married for forever and in a wonderful? Do I keep my mouth shut? What would you do?
Have a dinner party.
And, and invite everybody, and then I never thought of that one. Thanks. Who's in the Zoom? Rick?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Well, I think you shouldn't say anything because there's a lot of things you don't know. Number one, sure, they may have talked and she's never had a relationship. Maybe she's making up a lot of this. Maybe he's not interested in her really, just being friendly. So you can't know really all the facts of the marriage, and you can't know all the facts of this supposed developing relationship. So I think you just have to do nothing.
So again, Rick, what you're suggesting is I should keep my mouth shut, zip it, and see what happens.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I somehow find myself in the museum at the same time. And you don't have to say a thing, you just happen to be there, or maybe when she mentions, she's gonna say, I'm gonna be there Saturday, 11 o'clock. And you just happen to be there. Let him deal with it.
If we can't have the party, I'll go look for Bob and give him a lecture.
As I presented this, I saw a lot of heads going up and down. So let's hear what people want to do. What would you do? Come on up. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'll make people uncomfortable so you can just join into the discussion.
I'm not uncomfortable, but it's happened.
Oh.
No, not necessarily to me, thankfully. Other things have happened. But I worked in a big corporation, and I've seen a lot of craziness. And I've been to various events with people. And there have been times, sometimes the person after, the person that's doing the, I don't want to use the word philandering, but attempting, okay? I might say, because I'm friendly to them, you know, I happen to see something, just check it out. Like a little hint to the person, not necessarily getting into any involvement, because I don't think that's really my place. I mean, unless the friend really comes to me and starts talking about the guy's really fooling around or the girl's fooling around, then I might say something. But otherwise, I don't necessarily think it's my place to start interfering.
Oh, I'm sorry, who? Okay, Ginger, you want to unmute, and then Judy, I'll bring the mic over.
Yeah. Hello. Can you hear me, Joan?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so I think you need a second opinion. I think you should take everything you've got, all this somewhat information or the disinformation, and go send the whole thing, the whole story into the ethicist in the New York Times and have them solve your problems.
Oh. Thanks, Ginger. And I'm going to end up flying. Go ahead.
It's none of your business. My feeling is that we hear things, we don't know, you can't confirm it, and if we capture somebody else's story and we, kind of feed it, then it's our story. And so at this particular moment, as you present it, I think you just have to absorb it, and it's their lives.
Oh, go ahead, Lorraine, and then Patty.
I just have a question for you. Did she tell you the name of this person, or you were surmising?
I surmised it.
Okay, so why, at some point, couldn't you just say, oh, you know, who's the guy? What's his name? If she says his name, you say, oh, I've known him forever, or not, you know, and I've known him and his wife forever. I mean, I agree with Judy. I mean, I agree but you know, that it's not good to insert yourself. However, from the female perspective, I always want to have, same thing with the other dilemma, as much information as possible from anybody. I think if we all like stand back and don't intervene and don't do anything, I don't mean direct intervention all the time, I think that that's, you know, then that's where things go wrong in the world.
Well, I tend to not always give advice, but tell them a story. So I might have said something like, you know, when I was single, and I thought everybody was single with me, and then I'd find out so many of them were not single. And I'd say, how do you know? So I would say, how do you know? And they say, well, look and see if they've got a wedding ring on. Never even occurred to me. Or is there a dent where they just took their wedding ring off? And so when I was single, it made me ask people, are you in a committed relationship very early on? You know, you can ask about kids, but you can still be in a non-committed relationship and have kids. So I usually would give a story where I had been in a situation and found out the person was already committed. And then I realized to move on.
Come on, Linda.
So it sounds like she has the Cinderella complex, which I had when I was young, a lot younger than she was. And so whatever signs he may have been exhibiting about the fact that he maybe was married, she was ignoring totally because he was giving her all this attention and she was enjoying his company, and you know how women are sometimes. So I don't know what you said to her, but I hope you warned her. I would have warned her.
So can I clarify? Do you know that they met actually, or you presumed?
I am only going by what she told me, that she went to a museum, met a guy, they went out for coffee, and had a really lovely time.
But she didn't say his name.
She didn't, not the first lunch. I didn't act immediately on the first lunch, and maybe I should have said that. In the second lunch, after the first time she told me she'd met the guy, she said, I really am falling for this guy. This guy Bob is really a heck of a great guy, and we seem to have a whole lot in common. Okay. And I know that Bob goes to that museum on a regular basis.
So I feel like your friend has been single for so long, she really wants a relationship. So I would be a little careful not to break her heart, but also indirectly kind of, you know, maybe ask the name of the person. Hey, I know Bob. Maybe she doesn't care that he's married, and maybe his marriage is not as good as we think it is, and maybe they really want a relationship. But, you know, having said that, everybody needs to know the facts and then proceed.
It's interesting to me that nobody has asked about Bob's wife and the relationship that I have to both Bob and his wife. We've known those people for a very, very long time and have been friends for a very, very long time. Do I have any, should I be saying anything to his wife? Should I be saying anything to anybody? It's having a party, that's a great idea. And then what happens after the party? I don't know. But no one has even thought I mean, the cast of characters is my colleague, Bob, Ellie, and me. But no one mentioned anything about his wife, Ellie. Interesting.
Is Bob's wife, is she ill?
No, she's perfectly fine. She's not my usual person. And I'm not their therapist, I'm a friend.
No, I'm just physically
Yeah.
ill.
Yeah. I'll put you out of your misery in a few moments.
I just keep wondering if Bob is a character and your new friend, why bring Ellie into it? You sort the issue with the three of you, leave Ellie out of it until when it's done.
I think if you get the wife involved at this point, it's going too far. You're assuming too much. You are assuming of what kind of relationship is being developed. And it didn't sound to me, it sounded like she was very interested in him. I mean, it doesn't sound like they were consummating anything. So yeah, at this point, I think it's just that. Yeah. Sorry, everybody.
Okay, yes, one more comment.
Just one thing. I just wanted to mention something. When I'm talking about being so non-committal, it really depends on what's the level of friendship. I mean, if this guy is somebody, you said a colleague or you said a friend?
No, he's a friend.
A friend. Well, that's a different story, and if they're very, very close, then I would go to him. I would go to him. That's definitely what I would do. Listen, I just want you to know, I heard something. I don't want to get involved in it. It's your situation. But I understand that things could get very difficult. Thank you.
Okay, two more comments from the Zoom room, and then we will go further. Rick again. Okay, Rick.
Why don't you let Elaine or Mika go first? I already made a comment.
Okay, Elaine.
Yeah, I've been foaming at the bit sitting here at home, Joan, because I was constantly thinking of Bob's wife and of you. It's a lousy situation to be in, and if you have a very good relationship with Bob's wife, I don't see how you can really, not dig deeper and make something known.
Yeah.
I think that's an inhuman expectation to be out of it completely. If you've got a very, it depends upon the relationship. I would see it with Bob's wife, and I would dig deeper to find out more information, and maybe talk to Bob as the other person just said, or go further. I wouldn't just drop it.
Okay. And finally, Rick, last comment.
Well, I think in life, people run into other people they're attracted to. Nevertheless, they're in a solid marriage. And as Jimmy Carter famously said, have you ever had an affair? And he said, well, I've lusted in my heart or something like that. It's common. You meet people, you're attracted to each other, but nothing actually really ever comes of it. So why involve the wife and get her all upset over something that may never actually develop?
Okay. Here's what I did. And again, I've known Rick. Hi, Rick. I've known Bob and Ellen for a very, very long time. And I called Bob and I said, Bob, let's take a walk in the park. And this is not something that we've never done. We do this like every couple of weeks, take a walk in a park that's between the two homes. So we're out walking and I said, how are things going on at home? How are things? And again, we had a very friendly, connected relationship in that, and I could ask those questions, as could he. So what happened was, in the course of, I said, what's going on at home? And he said, Ellie and I are just sometimes we go through really bad patches. And we're in the middle of a really bad patch. And actually, said he, I met a really nice woman at the museum the other morning. And I know this, of course. I don't say anything. I met a really nice woman at the museum. And I have to tell you, we went out for coffee. It was really very pleasant. But that was it. It was just coffee. And I wanted to say to you, Joan, that I'm so glad you called me, because I have wanted to have couples counseling with Ellie for a very long time. And I was very embarrassed to tell you that things were really not so great at home. And you know what? It was just coffee. I have no interest in this woman. I love my wife, and I want to get through this rough patch. End of story.
That's what
Yeah.
I said, no, I would dig deeper.
Well,
Oh my goodness, I had such a nice time with you. I even told my friend Joan about it, and he said, oh boy, and I gotta get this under wraps. You called him immediately after, and you said, this is 2 and 2 together. I have to fix this quickly.
well, that was not necessarily one of my paths, but I hear you. Okay. One final comment about these two dilemmas, and what runs through these two dilemmas is the question of what do we do when we have information about that could really change the course of things. When I learned about a doctor who was probably misrepresenting himself seriously, that could have caused serious damage to this woman. My faculty member, no, maybe she was fabricating. Bob was a longtime friend. He wasn't lying to me. Bob was saying, I really need couples counseling, but I was too embarrassed to tell you that things weren't great at home. So often what I do when stuck in the middle of these kinds of moments is I say to myself, what's the price of silence? If I hadn't said something to Sally about that doctor, even phrasing it in a way that was okay in terms of my work obligations, if I didn't go to Bob and say, what's going on at home? I didn't say I have a colleague. I didn't go into any of that. But he was embarrassed about the difficulties going on in the house, shared that with me, and he and his wife started to see a couples counselor. So again, I say, what is the price of silence?
Thank you, Joan. That was amazing. What is the price of silence? I have to remember that.